Welcome! Today we're going to learn how to design a building brick using a program called Tinkercad. And this building brick will be compatible with all of your regular building bricks that you may already have. You can choose whether or not you want to personalize it or if you want to just leave it as your plain standard brick. So with that being said, let's get started. The first thing you want to do is open up a web browser such as Firefox or Google Chrome. So I have Firefox open here and I want to go to the address bar and type in www.tinkercad.com. Once I'm there, I'm going to see the home screen for Tinkercad. Depending on how you're using the tutorial, you can sign in or join your class. Or if you don't have an account yet, you'll click here on Join Your Now. Click here to join now and set up an account for yourself. So I've logged in, so now I see my design gallery. Now I'm ready to click here on this blue button, Create New Design. And that's going to open up a blank work plane so that I'll be able to begin creating my project. The first thing I want to do is see up in the left corner, at the top left corner, where Tinkercad has assigned my project a name. I want to change that name to be something more easily recognizable, so I'm going to call mine Betsy's Brick. And then I'm going to assume that I want my brick to be blue, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a color name. That just makes it easier when I export my file later to know exactly what it is that I've saved. Now the first thing I want to do is to add a box to the work plane. So I'm going to click on the box in the Shapes menu over on the side and add that to the work plane. Now I need to adjust the size of this box, so I'm going to click on one of these corner squares. That allows me to change the size. And I want it to be 15.8 millimeters wide, and I want it to be 31.8 millimeters long. And that'll be the dimensions of this brick. Now I need to change the height. I can adjust the height of a brick by clicking on that center square and changing the number there to be 11.4. And so now I have the basic shape of that building brick. Now I'm ready to begin adding the knobs to the top of the brick. So I'm going to first change my work plane by clicking on this work plane button and then changing that to be the top of the brick. This will allow everything that I now add to be on top of that brick instead of on the bottom work plane, that blue field there. So I've got that changed. I want to zoom in a little bit. You can zoom in by using the scroll button on your mouse, or by using the plus button over here, or by just clicking F on the keyboard, and that will focus in for you. Now I can see my brick a little better, so I'm going to click on the cylinder here and add that to the work plane. So now I have a giant cylinder on top of my brick. The first thing I want to do is adjust the number of sides. That'll just make that cylinder more round. And now I want to change the size of the cylinder to make it smaller. So I want to change those diameter there to 5 in both directions. And now I want to click on the center square so that I can change the height to be 1.8 millimeters. Now I'm ready to adjust the positioning of this cylinder so that it's in the right place on this brick. Now to do that, I'm going to be using the ruler. So this is a special skill. It takes a little time to learn how to use the ruler well. But the first thing I want to do is change my work plane back to normal. So I'll click on the work plane and then click back on the anywhere in the field there to turn it back to that blue work plane. And then I want to click here on the ruler. And then I just want to put it somewhere in the middle of my field. Now notice that the ruler is there. I now have lots of numbers all over my screen. The green ones tell me how far away this corner of my brick is from the this little point here where the ruler starts. Okay, and the others just tell me the size, okay, the dimensions of the different objects that I have selected. So the first thing I want to do is to make sure that my brick is right in line with this corner. Okay, I want the corner of my brick to be on that circle. So I'm going to change the dimensions here to 0. Make sure I'm clicking on the ones close to the green arrows there. Okay, and change this one to 0 as well. So with my ruler in place, I want to make sure that the corner of my brick is aligned with the corner of the ruler. That will allow me everything else that I place on the brick to be aligned correctly. So I need to make sure I select the brick. Okay, and then I want to change those green measurements to be 0 so that it will be correctly aligned with the corner of that brick. So you can see now the brick is in the corner of the ruler. And now I want to use the ruler to align the peg, this little peg that I made before. And I'm going to change each dimension to be 1.4 so that it measures 1.4 in both directions away from that corner. Now my first knob is in place. I'm ready to create the second one. I'm going to click on my first knob, make sure that it is selected, and then I'm going to click on the duplicate feature to create a second knob. Now notice you can't see that one because it's right on top of the first one. So I need to move it. I want to keep it 1.4 millimeters away from this edge, but I want to move this over. Now I have to zoom out a little bit so that I can see that 1.4. If I change the 5, then it would actually make my knob larger, which I don't want. I want to just move the position. Remember, the green arrows move position. So I'm going to change the 1.4 to be 9.4. There are 8 millimeters in between each of the knobs. So this is 1.4 from the edge, this is 9.4 from the edge. Now I'm going to click duplicate again. And you'll notice as long as I didn't click anything in between, it will automatically duplicate it another 8 millimeters over. If you accidentally clicked anything in between, that's okay. Just go down and change the numbers next to that green arrow to be 17.4. Now I'm going to click duplicate again, and now I'll have all 4 knobs there on that part of the brick. And now I'm ready to repeat that so that I have the second set of knobs up here, second set of 4. So I have one knob already selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to select each of the other knobs. So I'm holding down the Shift key the whole time. That allows me to select more than one thing at a time. So now I have all 4 of the knobs selected. I can see up here that all 4 are selected. And then I'm going to click on duplicate. Okay, so again, I have all 4 knobs. It went ahead and moved it over 8 millimeters for me, even though I didn't really want it to. And then I'm going to adjust the dimensions. Okay, so I want it to be 1.4 millimeters away from the edge. Okay, and that'll put it back right on top of the others. But then I want it to be 9.4 millimeters in this direction, away from the edge. Okay, and so now I have all 8 knobs on the top of this building brick. Now, if you really wanted to, you could stop at this point. Your brick now does look like a typical building brick, except for the bottom. So it wouldn't work, like it wouldn't stack on top of other bricks. But if you only want the look of the brick, then this is as far as you need to go. But if you want it to actually stack, we're going to continue and learn how to make that happen. So the first thing you need to do is make the brick hollow. So I need to use a hole. So over here on the shapes menu, I have these gray striped shapes. That means that there are holes. So I'm going to click on one of those, the box shape, and drag it onto the work plane and just drop it kind of anywhere. Now we've been using the green features, but the blue features are also showing me how the dimensions of the particular object. So right now I can see this whole box is 20 by 20 by 20 millimeters. I want to change it so that it is 13.4 millimeters in this direction and 29.4 millimeters in this direction. I want to adjust the height by clicking here on the center square or by using this number over here and typing it to 8.6. Now I want to align this whole box with the red box over here. So I have this one already selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and also select the red box so that I have both of those objects selected. Then I'm going to come up to the top and click here on this button, which is my Align tool. Now I'll see that I have these little thumbtacks appear all around my objects. I want to first choose which object I want to be still, not to move. So I want the red box not to move and to stay where it is. So I click on that and I'll notice that the thumbtacks all move just to around that red box. And then I want to center that hole in this direction as well as in this direction. Now with all of that still selected, I'm going to click on the group tool, which is this button right here. And now those two things have been grouped together. I can look at my brick from the bottom and see that indeed a hole has been cut out. In order to rotate your viewing angle, hold down the right mouse button and move your mouse around on the screen, or you can use the die over here in the corner. Now I'm ready to actually put the holes on the bottom that will allow it to stick together. So I'm going to be working and looking at the brick from the bottom now. So I'm going to add a cylinder to the work plane first. I'm going to increase the number of sides here to be 64. That makes it as round as I can make it. And now I want to change the dimensions of the cylinder. First, I'm going to click on this arrow to move that shape box out of the way so that I can see the dimensions better. I want to change the diameter in both directions here to be 6.51 and 6.51 this way, so that I have a nice round shape. Now the next thing I want to do is hollow out the cylinder, so I'm going to choose another one of these gray striped cylinders. I want to increase the number of sides to 64, so I click on the arrow to open the options for the shape back up, increase the number of sides to 64, and now I'm going to close that arrow so it's out of the way. And now I want to change the diameter of this hole to be 4.8. So 4.8 in this direction as well as 4.8 in this direction. So I have this shape still selected. Hold down the Shift key and select the other shape, this other cylinder. So I have both the orange cylinder and the whole cylinder selected. And now I'm going to click on the Align tool. I want my orange cylinder to be the one that is still, so I'm going to click on it. And then I want to center align that hole in this direction as well as in this direction. So now you can see that hole in the middle there. With both of those still selected, I'm going to click on the Group tool to group those together. Now this cylinder is still too high. Right now I can see it's 20 millimeters high. If I scroll back around from the front, you can see that how high that is. I want to change that dimension there to be 8.6, so that it's 8.6 millimeters high. And now I want to make that cylinder in the middle of the brick. So with the cylinder selected, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select the red brick. And then I'm going to click here on my Align tool. It's the brick that I want to be still, so I'm going to click on it. And I want to center align it this direction and center align it this direction. Now I have the hole, or that cylinder, right in the middle of that brick. Now I need to create two more of those cylinders and put them on either side. So the first thing I need to do is click anywhere on the work plane to deselect this Align tool. Now I want to click on that orange cylinder and then click on Duplicate to create a copy of it. Now again, the copy is right on top of the first one, so I can't really see it. But I will be able to if I adjust the size or the positioning. So I see here that the positioning is 12.65. I'm going to change that to be 4.65. Okay, so that it is 8 millimeters away from the other one. Now I'm going to do the same thing again. Click on that middle cylinder, duplicate it, and change the horizontal distance this time to be 20.65 so that it's 8 millimeters away in the opposite direction. And that is the basic shape of the building brick. If you want to get very technical, you can also add some small little walls here along the side. I have a paper tutorial that walks you through doing that. It doesn't really affect the functionality of the brick, but if you want it to look exactly like one of the typical bricks, then that's what you would want to add. So the next thing I need to do is group everything together. So I'm going to click over here in the corner somewhere in space and then just drag the mouse so that I select everything in my design. And then I'm going to click here on the group button. And that's going to make everything into one object. Okay, and you can see everything is now one color and everything is one object. Now I'm going to add my name to the front of the brick. You can personalize yours as you wish or not personalize it at all if you don't want to. But before I do that, I'm going to get rid of the ruler because it is kind of in the way. So I'm going to click here on this X in the middle. If you see it from the top, it's a little easier to see, but dismiss the ruler and that will make my work plane a little less cluttered. Now the next thing I want to do is change the work plane to be the front of this brick. So now everything I add will be on the front of the brick. From the Shapes menu over here on the side, I'm going to find the Text option and click on it and add it to the front of the brick. You'll notice it's huge and that it says Text. So the first thing I want to do is change what it says. So I'm going to click on this little arrow so that I see all of my shape options. And here where that says Text, Text, I want to change the text to be my name. I can play with the font if I want. There are 4 different options. I can choose whichever one I like the best. And then I'm going to minimize that window again. And now I'm going to just drag one of the corners until it's about the size that I want it to be and so that it looks like it'll fit onto that brick. Now I can always hit the F key on the keyboard to focus in so that I can see that a little better. I can rotate around with my mouse. I can use the Align tool by selecting both objects and clicking on the Align tool. Depending on what your name is and what letters are in your name will affect on how well that works. Okay, sometimes, for example, if you have the Y that drags all the way down, it will overestimate and make the name too high. Okay, and then you can just use the arrow keys to place it as you will. Now you'll notice the name is sticking way off of the brick, which is not what I want to have happen. So I'm going to click here on this center square, and I want to change the size to be 0.5. So it's only 0.5 millimeter thick. Now I'm going to change the name to be a hole. And now I'm going to use this little teardrop tool to actually press that hole into the brick. So I'm going to go around to the side so I can see this. I call it a teardrop. It's also like a triangle. I'm going to click and drag it in 0.5 millimeter. Now you'll notice it didn't let me. It made me go -1. So I have a couple of options here. I can stop right here and quickly click on one of those buttons, one of those numbers, and change that to -0.5. Okay, and that will make it 0.5 millimeter in. I can also come down here and change my snap grid to be 0.5 millimeter, and that's going to make whatever I do on the screen work in 0.5 millimeter increments instead of whole millimeter increments. Okay, and so that would allow me to make those more smaller adjustments. So now I have my name on the brick and I have it inserted into the brick. So I'm going to change my work plane back to normal just by clicking on work plane and then clicking anywhere on the screen besides the brick itself. Now I'm going to drag a box around everything so that everything is selected. And then I'm going to group it together, and that'll actually cut the hole out of that brick. And so now I have my brick ready. If you want to make more than one brick, you can do that by, with that brick selected, click on Duplicate, and then take your duplicated copy, just move it over to the side a little bit, ungroup it, and that will make sure the name is no longer grouped together with the brick. Zoom in a little bit, click on that name. You might have to click somewhere else first and then click on the name. And then change the name to be something else. Then you might need to readjust the positioning of it. Okay, make sure you don't drag it the wrong direction. And I'm going to just use this to drag it down a little bit further. And then I'm going to select them again and group them back together. So that's the way you could make more than one brick at a time if you wanted to. Once you have all your bricks that you want designed, you're ready to export them. So like I said, I wanted my bricks to be blue. So it really doesn't matter what color they are on the screen, but sometimes it can help me visualize a little better what it's going to look like. So I'm just going to click on them and change the color to blue. And again, to change the color of something, just click on that round circle there and it'll change the color. And with those bricks now complete, I am going to export them. If I want to export them one by one, I can select the brick and click export, but I'm going to export both of them. I want them both to be blue, so I'm going to export them both together. So I'm going to click here on export. And then I want to save it as an STL file. And I can see that it has now saved that. You might have another window pop up and ask you if you want to save the file. Just choose the option to save file and it will save it. So now the last thing I need to do is slice my brick. So I've opened up my slicing program, Prusa Slicer. Yours may be different depending on which slicing program you use, but your process should be fairly similar. I'm going to import my files, and I called mine Betsy's Brick Blue, so I'm going to import that. And I can see it, see what it looks like, make sure everything looks like I want it to. You can change your print settings here. You want to print this in a fairly good detail, so I might go with a 0.15 here. You can go up to 0.2, it seems to work fine. But then I don't need any support. The bridging is small enough that it should be able to bridge that without any difficulty. The infill will be 20%. The one thing I want to watch for on this particular print is your elephant foot. Typically, an elephant foot is what happens when the printer prints that first layer. It tends to be a little bit thicker than the other layers on top of that. For most prints, it doesn't matter, but for these building bricks, it can actually matter, and you can actually see that it's thicker on the bottom. And so you want to try to avoid that. You should have an option in your print settings to change the elephant foot compensation here under the advanced option here. And I want to change that elephant foot compensation to 0.15. Anything between 0.1 and 0.2 should be fine. You don't have to do that. It'll be fine. It'll still work if you don't, but it will give you a smoother, better looking brick if you can adjust your elephant foot compensation there. Okay, once I've done that, I can slice it and I'm ready to print it. So I hope you enjoyed making your bricks and print away.